Hello and welcome to the Pinfall. Today we are doing a Pinfall rewind show, and as we're on the road to WrestleMania, we are going back 23 years to look at WrestleMania 14. This went down on the 29th of March 1998 in Boston in front of over 19,000 fans. Joining me to look back at this is Barnsey and Jordan. You all right, lads?
Yeah, buzzing.
Yeah, well, how are you?
Good, good. Right, let's go straight to it. The main event of WrestleMania 14, we had Stone Cold Steve Austin defeating Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, to win the WWF title. As JR said, the Stone Cold era has begun. Did you enjoy the match?
Yeah, looking back on it, I just thought it was so good. The first thing I noticed when I load up a pay-per-view is the duration. I think this was like between 2.5 hours and 2 hours 45, and it's just, you just know that is the perfect amount to have in one sitting. And this was basically a few weeks after I'd just started getting into wrestling, so it was the birth of the Attitude Era. It just had everything. It had, one of the greatest to ever do it, defending his title. It had one of the baddest men on the planet on the outside as the special enforcer, and it had, the greatest for me, superstar. Just, I love Austin, and yeah, this really started, the propelling of his career, and yeah, literally loved it.
Yeah, it was just great to go back and watch two of the very best to do it in their prime and just putting on a stellar match. And boy, does HBK take a hell of a punch from Mike Tyson at the end. Christ. Yeah, don't want to be in his shoes when that happened. I did notice as well, I feel like Triple H has nicked it for a couple of his takeovers now with the camera as they're coming out to the entrance. We had it with Austin and HBK. I think we saw it on Takeover Vengeance, watching them pan to before their music hits, and I actually think it's quite cool going back and seeing that, and now seeing like Triple H has brought it back for NXT. That was quite a nice thing to see.
Yeah, they've been doing that at the NXTs for the last few pay-per-views with the heart beating sort of. Yeah, that always reminds me of that match, Austin and Shawn Michaels. So it's great, and it's funny how they go past, like, obviously where Vince McMahon and everyone's sitting, and how you now see it represented when, like, they just showed Bianca Belair winning the Royal Rumble. You see how it's elevated, just the production and everything. It's just so much bigger now. I think you just said there was 19,000 fans there. You wouldn't get a WrestleMania like that now. You're talking, they're trying to break attendance records at every outfield arena in the world. So, yeah, it's just proper throwback, proper great wrestling card, and I just literally loved it.
So for me, I just love the fact that the main event just lived up to expectations. It was the best match on the card, and at WrestleMania, that's what you want. You want the best match to be the last match, and I thought this match was definitely the best. And also, looking back on it as well, when you think about Shawn Michaels not wrestling again for another 3.5 years because he was injured, his performance and the bumps he was taking was incredible. I thought he was really good in this match.
Yeah, there was one, he flew outside the ring. It almost looked like Triple H went to sort of catch him, but only sort of caught his legs, and he took a hard one onto his back. But yeah, Shawn Michaels, just back in the day, is just incredible. And you can see why so many wrestlers have tried to emulate him or still try and be like him coming up. And just an incredible, incredible talent. It's always a shame we lost those years where he wasn't wrestling.
Yeah, I don't think he wrestled until, I think, SummerSlam 2002 after this, so he had a long time out, and just knowing, like, that injury that he had and the performance he still put on, like you say, that spot that he took, you're just like, what an unbelievably strong and courageous guy he is, and he just played the role of the heel so well in the build-up to it by getting Tyson on side, and just, he absolutely made Austin a star almost in that night by having Austin beat Shawn Michaels. That was enough to propel him to be, like, a proper, big champion within WWF at the time. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, because I don't know if you heard rumours. There was rumours that Shawn Michaels didn't want to lose the belt to Steve Austin, and on the Austin podcast with Undertaker, they were talking about how there was rumours that Shawn Michaels wasn't going to drop the belt, and that if he sort of played up, the Undertaker was going to come down during the main event and beat up Shawn Michaels for real. It's really good. If you get a chance, go on the it's the the Austin Undertaker Broken Skulls. It's the second one. It's really interesting, and it sort of shows that obviously Shawn Michaels back in the day, in the 90s, his attitude probably did stink, and he's probably a very selfish guy. But when he came back in 2002, he was such a company man. He was putting everyone over. Where back in the 90s, he was almost refusing to put over, say, someone like Stone Cold.
Well, yeah, obviously followed the Montreal Screwjob as well. Only 3 or 4 months prior, so he's definitely got some previous with that. But yeah, one thing that always makes me laugh about this match is the Mike Tyson quick count at the end, because it almost has a little bit of a sour ending. It should have just been, but I suppose it's just the way that Tyson is. He's just, so fast paced, and everything he does is just heel to the metal, basically. But yeah, love like George mentioned earlier, I love the punch at the end. It's just so good with him walking off with the Austin t-shirt, and yeah, just brought back some amazing memories.
Which other matches stood out for you on the WrestleMania 14 card?
I mean, we've got to go to Undertaker and Kane. Their first match, I thought it was quite interesting as well. I didn't think they were sort of onto it back then, but they did have a graphic, I think I saw online, where it actually showed them saying Undertaker was 6-0 at WrestleMania. And then I was thinking, Christ, 6-0 back then. You think, what he went on to, he'd been 7-0 after that match. But what an incredible fight between those two. I particularly love the spot where Undertaker just goes through the table, the commentary table. That was just outrageous. For such a big man to fly. Just a great spot. And I love Paul Bear. He's just amazing as well. I loved it at the end, coming in, just kicking, or sort of half kicking, got the chair. Like, he looks like a guy who was just going to do no damage to you, but he just wanted to do it. Just a great manager and a legend.
Yeah, I did. I take a flying off the top ropes in my notes as one of the highlights of the match. What I also liked as well was how it took Kane 3 tombstones to be pinned. So even though the Undertaker got the win, they really made Kane look strong. And it sort of helped probably his character last as long as it did, because they just made him look just like a star as well in this match.
Yeah, and even on the 3rd tombstone, I think he kicks out at 4. So it's just after the 3 to almost show that he was nearly getting up. But some of them tombstones, I think it's the first or the second one. I was a bit like, that looked like it was close to being a botch, But another bit as well where they managed to, the Undertaker's got Kane up for the tombstone, and they do. I think it's the first time you see them flip over, and then the next thing Kane's got the Undertaker in the tombstone. Just unbelievable show of strength. And in the build up to this match, it was one of the reasons why I got intrigued by watching wrestling, because a couple of weeks before this happened, you had Kane having lightning bolts attack the ring announcing desk. He sets one of the crew members who's doing the lighting on fire, and you're just, I think I've mentioned this before, he was one of the guys that just used to give me nightmares when I was like an 8-9-year-old. But and then on the other hand, you had the Undertaker building the fighters like he would never fight his brother, and on the Raw before he fights this match, he's at their gravestones saying that he's going to have to go to eternal damnation to be able to get over this fight, and just such good compelling storyline, and they certainly delivered when they got on the main stage as well. It's just, such a good match.
Because if you think we just covered Royal Rumble 1998, and the main event was Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, and what happened in the main event has set up the 2 main events of WrestleMania, hasn't it? So it's quite nice that they've sort of really long-term booking for about the matches they want to have on this card. And the Undertaker Kane match was probably set up at Royal Rumble, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's always nice to see the formula, never really changes. They know what sort of works, and it's good that you can start some of these feuds at Rumble and carry on towards Mania, which is what's the road to Mania so exciting?
Cool. Barnes, is there a match that stood out for you on the card?
Yeah, I suppose it was like The Rock against Ken Shamrock. The reason this stood out for me was because Ken Shamrock wins the match, but then the decision gets reversed because he absolutely snaps after the match ends, and the decision's reversed because he absolutely batters The Rock, and then he goes after the referees and he just completely snaps. I don't know if that's ever happened in another WrestleMania match. I can't can't think that has happened. But yeah, this was obviously the birth of so many big stars after this this WrestleMania. The Rock obviously having disputes with Farouk about being the leader of the nation, and we obviously know what happens after that. But yeah, just a big moment in his career, and yeah, he must hold the record for having the only fight at WrestleMania where he loses but keeps the belt.
Yeah, I tell you what, we talk about on Ask the Pinfall about underrated wrestlers, but Ken Shamrock must be up there. He was incredible. Like at the end of it, he was like that Nation of Domination are some big guys. He was just flinging them around like there was nobody's business. And you know, he had that UFC background and stuff. I'm surprised he was never. I believe he was never WWE champion.
No, he wasn't. He went on to win King of the Ring later this year,
Yeah,
1998, but nothing really come of it. He beat The Rock in the final of the King of the Ring tournament.
yeah. It's like it's quite surprising as well with WWE how they like these real life fighters when they come over, and to see him not really go further on, especially when you look at the likes of sort of Angle and others like Lesnar as well. It's surprising they never really stuck with him, and I wonder what must have gone on, because he had this fight with The Rock and he had it at the Rumble '98 as well, and both were just excellent matches. And it just showed the talent that was with The Rock. I think he did like a pre-interview as well, where he's talking about being president, and which is quite funny because he's in real life now, been talking about how he may one day run. So yeah, bit of a glow up for The Rock. But yeah, Shamrock quite underrated. Felt like he should have done more. Pardon?
He looked ripped.
Yeah, like D'Lo Brown, Godfather, Mark Henry, like not small people to be like belly to belly suplexing and just flinging around the ring. Should have done more. I still think he's active now in TNA, which is pretty incredible as well.
One match that I enjoyed was the European title match. This was Triple H beating Owen Hart. You had the outside sort of drama with Chyna being handcuffed to Sergeant Slaughter, and she threw powder in his eyes to hit a low blow to help Triple H win. But I thought this was a really good match. Like for Mat Wrestling and for quality in the ring, I think this was definitely up there. It was one of the better matches of the night.
Yeah, it was one of the first times that I think Triple H defended the title, because he was actually given this belt by Shawn Michaels over Christmas as a Christmas present. And so when he had the belt, he actually had a dislocated kneecap, so he couldn't fight for a good few months. And then in the build up to this one, Owen Hart had an ankle injury, and a couple of weeks before the match, they made Owen Hart the champion because Triple H couldn't defend it. And then in that match, Chyna took like a hammer to Owen Hart's leg, so it made Triple H become the champion again. And obviously, they both recover and have this match at Mania. But that's the reason why Chyna was handcuffed to Sergeant Slaughter, just because of the amount of times that she'd been interfering in the match. And, you know, I think we spoke about Chyna before and just how much of a trailblazer she was for the women. And just, yeah, she added so much to this match. It was great at the end where she threw the powder in his eyes, got involved and helped Triple H win. And it sort of, yeah, it just elevated Triple H, because I think the next night on Raw, now Shawn Michaels leaves, he starts the new era of D-Generation X, getting X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws on board. So it was a big monumental win for him as well, and yeah, it just sort of paved the way the landscape was going to lie with him and his career. So yeah, quite a big moment for him.
Yeah, around this time, Triple H did put on a lot of like these good quality matches. I know he was in DX as being one of Shawn's really good friends, but they really did make him have to prove his worth in the ring, and he certainly did it. This match and the one that always sticks out is the SummerSlam ladder match with The Rock, as an absolute incredible match as well. So he had these mid-card titles, and you know, it was thoroughly deserved that he went on to lead DX and be given that opportunity to, you know, show why he was a main eventer. And it's a shame we didn't get more of Owen Hart. What a wrestler he was. Yeah, I mean, when I look back and sort of remember as much wrestling, he was more of that sort of parody wrestler. Like, so it was nice to see him, you know, a bit further back and how he should have always been portrayed. But what a wrestler!
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of his matches because I come into sort of wrestling sort of after '99. But whenever I've gone back and watched an old match like him versus Brett at WrestleMania 10, and then say this match, there's a Spring Stampede or Canadian Stampede match. He's always been really good in the ring, so might be something I'll try and look back on and try and find some more of his matches, because everyone talks so highly of him as being a quality wrestler.
Yeah, WWE gave him a massive contract to stay because obviously Brett, after the Montreal Screwjob, went to WCW, and they wanted to keep Owen Hart because they thought he was actually probably one of the strongest wrestlers in the world at that time. So yeah, it probably was surprising he never got into the main event status as Brett did. But yeah, unbelievable talent, and just a shame obviously what happened to him.
I think it was JR in the Dark Side of the Ring who said he was just sort of, he was there just before his time, or when, those technical wrestlers come through. He was just a few years before, like the Jerichos, Guerreros, Benoit, like all hitting WWE, which is a great shame, because if he was in their sort of era, he would have been an absolute stud, even with Kurt Angle and such. So yeah, I think JR put it right. He was just a wrestler before his time.
Jordan, any other matches that stand out for you on this card?
Well, I mean, I brought him up in the Rumble, and they gave it a real big match build, and 1998 was such a strange year for Goldust. Bloody hell. Like, I can't really remember much of 98, and they gave a lot of build up to this, and the outfits, Luna, just all of it, just very strange. And they were going into it how Marc Mero was jealous of Sable, and then he got with Goldust, and he was dressed up as Sable in one of the segments. And that match for some reason just sticks out to me, just how wild 1998 was, with some of the kayfabe and the characters in it. And it was one of those matches just for Sable, really, to give her a moment, and how popular she was as well back then.
Yeah, I mean, the powerbomb and the TKO that she hits at the end was proper impressive, and it was almost like you didn't really see too many women on the cards back then. So for them to get a main role on WrestleMania, was a really good spot. And then obviously she goes on to have a pretty big year in 1998. So yeah, interesting match, just the way it was built. I'm not sure we'd sort of see too much of that these days, but it was good match.
I thought it was really interesting as well that it was only the third ever mixed tag team match. And you think about it, that nowadays, how we've had like mixed tag tournaments and stuff, and only 23 years ago it was the third only. And I don't think the ref sort of knew what was going on, because I think there was a point where Sable was pinning Goldust and he started counting, but now obviously the rules have changed on that. It's like you can only pin each other's gender. So it did show as well how new that sort of was in the wrestling world.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on some of the WrestleManias before it, I don't even know if there was women competing in some of the matches. So maybe this was a bit of a groundbreaker for that. And it was definitely Sable's coming out match, wasn't it?
Yeah. Just elevated her to be a big star, and she come out of it looking a lot better than Marc Mero, who obviously she then falls out with in the storyline after Mania. Nice one.
Barnsley, another match that sticks out for you?
Probably Taka Michinoku against however you say his name, Aguila, but it was the first. I think it was the first and only time the light heavyweight title was defended at a WrestleMania. Obviously, it got later renamed the Cruiserweight belt, I think, once the Invasion period had happened. But yeah, just he obviously come into WWE as quite a big star. He was completely unbeaten going into this match, and just, quite short and snappy, but there were some really, really big spots in it. The Alcai moonsault to the outside, and just the Michinoku driver, some big hits. And I just fondly remember Taka Michinoku moving on from this and having feuds with Val Venus in 1998. And in one episode of Raw, I think he ended up the show ending with him chopping his nuts off with a samurai sword. Some bizarre things that were happening in the Attitude Era. But yeah, Taka Michinoku, big star.
1998 was wild. Again, these sort of matches probably just before their time. Especially back then, the wrestling, everyone just was very much smash mouth, get everyone in the ring, weapons. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyable match, and it broke up the pay-per-view quite nicely as well.
Yeah, that Aguila, he went on to wrestle again in WWE later on, about 2 years later, under the name of S.A. Rios.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he came in with Lita, yeah. So, yeah, he had a bit of a, bitty career in WWF, but at least you can say he performed at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
One match that I definitely think stood out was the dumpster match for the tag titles, where you saw Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie defeat the New Age Outlaws. Crazy dumpster match, full of all the sort of hardcore sort of spots as you can imagine. Really good match, and yeah, it was nice to see Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie get their moment and become the tag team champions.
Yeah, it felt like, out of the context, it's like they've always been feuding themselves or fighting one another in all these outrageous hardcore matches. So it looked quite nice that they've come together to win the tag belts. But like you said, it was just 90s hardcore wrestling at its finest. And even the win, they sort of not only put him in the dumpster that was just hanging around back, but they put like the pallet on top of it as well, so they couldn't get out, and just trapped him in there. Yeah, great match. The New Age Outlaws as well. What a tag team they were back then. Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyable match.
Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier. Obviously, this was a big match for the Outlaws as well, because they'd go on and to join D-Generation X the next night on Raw, despite losing the belts. But yeah, they built themselves quite a name for themselves in this match with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. And like you say, it was nice that they got their WrestleMania moment, especially after some of the in that Royal Rumble match when they're hitting each other with dumpster cans and God knows what. And yeah, they just took sort of hardcore wrestling to a new level in this. And I think at the time it was just to sort of rival what we were seeing with the emergence of ECW as well. So it was like WWF's little, spin on and taking on board the competition and just having it on their show too.
Yeah, the other match we haven't mentioned is the Battle Royal to become the number one contenders for tag team championships, and that was won by a returning LOD with Sonny. This was a crazy match to start, wasn't it? I think 15 teams, 30 men all in the ring at once.
It's not often you start a WrestleMania with a Royal Rumble. And like, it was how they used to do it back in the day as well, where like everyone was in the ring and then you're just waiting for the popular team to come out. And Legion of Doom, again, just so popular, like probably one of the most popular tag teams there's been. Like, they come out and it's almost like a main event is coming out. Just so popular, and it seemed like a return for them as well. And yeah, just a standard win for them as well. So yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from it, was just how popular they were.
Yeah, it was like almost the when we didn't expect the Hardy Boys to return at WrestleMania to win the belts a few years back. This was like the 1998 moment, because the Legion of Doom had pretty much split up on. They'd lost the titles to the Outlaws, and then they'd split up and said that they'd never wrestle again. So then to find them coming out and to have to go up against the new Midnight Express that were formed and were expected to win, it was a pretty big moment. And yeah, like you say, the crowd popped for them. I think we mentioned at the Royal Rumble when Vader come out how big of a star he was and how liked he was. I think this was matched by the Legion of Doom and their appearance, and it was probably helped a little bit by having Sonny by their side too.
Yeah, it's definitely a good start to the pay-per-view. Nice sort of like fan favourite, good moment feeling.
Yeah, get some all into it and like happy and buzzing. And then what really made me die was when Pete Rose come out, because he absolutely roasted Boston. My God, some of the things he was saying, it was hilarious. You don't really get that these days. It's almost like he went, you got 5 minutes, just go absolutely tear them a new one.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but a couple of the times Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler referenced the Boston crowd. And at the start on the network now, basically they always play America the Beauty and the national anthem, and they've cut it out because on this event, Chris Warren and the DX Band, who opened the show, they got booed so badly before, during, and after their performance. They've completely cut it out, so you can't even watch it anymore. So that's why it sort of starts in a bit of an impromptu way with, I think it's the Nation that come out for the tag match, and then the Legion of Doom. But yeah, they completely cut it out because they got absolutely roasted. So yeah, that was like probably one of the only WrestleManias again on the network where you don't see the national anthem being sung at the start.
Wow. Yeah, there's a few things on this pay-per-view on this WrestleMania which sort of made it look like you could tell it was 23 years ago. One of the things was how sort of the tag team battle royal, no one really got their entrance apart from two teams. And Aguila in the cruiserweight match, he didn't get an entrance either. He was just sort of waiting in the ring. And to think that could happen at WrestleMania is absolutely crazy, really.
I was just going to say, it was one of those things like, it almost felt like any other pay-per-view compared to like how WrestleMania is now. And I know we're talking 23 years difference, but over the decades, they have just, elevated what WrestleMania is and the spectacle that pay-per-view has become.
Yeah, because no fireworks either. Just like you said, it was almost like a start of a Raw, really. But it was WrestleMania, the biggest card of the year. But I think obviously their presentation has improved so much.
Yeah, I think all we got when Austin won was a little bit of confetti as they went up the ramp with it, like on where the WrestleMania sign was. That was pretty much it. But yeah, it brings back a lot of memories because it was the first one I ever watched. So it's you sort of fall in love with the first one you see, I suppose.
Yeah, I thought it was a solid WrestleMania, and like you said, near the start, this was 2 hours 44 minutes. It's nice to be able to go back in history and sit down and watch WrestleMania, and you could probably do it in one sitting if you like. This was nice pace. I think all the matches are in a good order as well, so I thought it was a really good WrestleMania.
Yeah, completely agree. Jinx.
Cool. Well, that is it for our WrestleMania rewind of WrestleMania 14. Thank you very much for listening. We've got a couple more coming up before this year's WrestleMania, so please look out for that. And that is it for Pinfall Rewind. Time to ring the bell.